Between the two of them. The inside of Coates. Barker gets too heavily involved. And that's Whitehead and Coates.
Just a good old boy, never meaning no harm. Beats all you never saw, been in trouble with the law since the day they was born. Straightening the curves, flattening the hills. Someday the mountain might get 'em, but the law never will. Making their way the only way they know how. That's just a little bit more than the law will allow. Just a good old boy, wouldn't change if they could. Fighting the system like a true modern day Robin Hood.
We'll turn this around. We'll turn this around. We'll turn this around. We'll turn this around. We'll turn this around.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome along to the VRRC and the third event of the AGON by AOC Mazda MX5 Cup. We are on a tour of the United States of America. We've had 2 weeks of very exciting racing already. One sprint racing night, one night of longer distance racing a week ago. We're back to the two-race sprint format here and at the home, the new home anyway, of the US Grand Prix, the Circuit of the Americas in Texas, playing host to two 20-minute MX5 races this evening. My name's Andy McEwan, Jack Oliphant, as always, alongside me in the commentary box. And we arrived, Jack, at a circuit that has very rapidly become one of the homes of US motor racing, certainly US road racing. The Circuit of the Americas is a track like no other, and I'm intrigued to see what sort of racing it gives us tonight.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it, the Circuit of America? Because you say it's a track like no other, but that's because it's an amalgamation of pretty much every other track. They've tried their best to replicate all kinds of tracks from all over the world, and they've come up with the circuit that we're at today. So let's see how they get on with the MX5s. But like you just mentioned, the Road America was last week. We had the 40-minute race. Split opinions slightly on whether people like the sprint races or the endurance race. We actually quite liked it in the commentary box. Let's see if the next couple continue to please us anyway. But obviously back to the sprints. But last week, we'll stick on it for the time being, because Joel Lask took the most amount of points, with Eric Axelson coming in second place, and Kyle Felvers was third. And remember, there was only one race, but it was worth double championship points. So Joel Lask, he only needed to win one race to take home the most amount of points. And you can see on your screen in front of you that puts him right at the tippy top of the championship order as well. Joel Lask with 55 points ahead of Eric Axelson, who's been dominant in qualifying. We'll see whether he's as dominant tonight as well. But he's on 54 points, only 1 point the difference. Carl Felvers, third last week, third in the championship, 47, and definitely not out of contention. Elliot Dalton-Ayres didn't have the best night last week. I don't think he even managed to get to the start of the race, unfortunately. He was 38 points. Josh Martin rounds out the top five with 36 points. You can see a couple of big drivers. Nicky Taylor down in 7th at the moment. Expect to him make a little bit of a comeback. And Alok Iyengar, he is in 11th place. Unfortunately, he's been called into work this evening, so he won't be improving.
Worth mentioning that these points are the best score each driver has had over the first 2 rounds. Each driver drops 1 round's worth of points. The endurance race is being worth double points to make that fair. And so Joel Lask's best score, which was last week at the 40-minute race, just slightly better than Eric Axelson's score from week 1. So that will become a little bit clearer and will settle down a bit the more rounds that we have, this being only the third of the 8-week racing. So that's how the championship table looks then as we arrive here at the Circuit of the Americas for the next rounds of the championship. Racing in these highly modified Mazda MX-5s. They're not the bog standard MX-5 that you will find on Assetto Corsa. That car has the 2-litre naturally aspirated engine producing around about 160 brake horsepower, 1 tyre compound only, no adjustable brake bias or diff. The power to rate ratio, as you can see, significantly less than what we've got in our hybrid powered 2-litre turbocharged Mazda MX-5 Cup car, which, as you can see, produces around about 80 extra brake horsepower. You can then throw an extra 50 brake horsepower on top of that for 10 seconds on 15 separate occasions over the course of the race, that courtesy of the hybrid system. We've also given them a choice of 3 different compounds of tyre. That will be interesting tonight, actually. It's a long lap here at COTA, and tyre management or tyre choice could prove to be crucial. Also fully adjustable brake bias and differential as well to allow the drivers to really hone in on the feel and the handle of the car that they would like. Well, we are deep into the qualifying session already. Before we jump in and see what the times are like, let's have a closer look, shall we, courtesy of our hot lap of this Circuit of the Americas.
Welcome everyone to the track guide for the third round of the AGON by AOC MX5 Turbo Cup. We're here at Circuit of the Americas. Beginning the lap now, we head up to the climb towards turn 1. You're going to be looking for just beyond the 100-meter board for your braking zone here. You can brake extremely late due to the uphill. The key is to get it stopped and rotated and get back on the power nice and early to get a good slingshot out of the corner. Turn 2 is easily flat out. It's all about getting the line of least resistance and getting set up for the S's. It's all about commitment and balancing the car. How much speed can you take through each of the corners? You've got to use both the throttle and the brake to try and get the car to be nice and balanced. Sometimes you might have to fight some oversteer like we do here. Then back over to the left. Use as much of this curb as you dare. Back over to the left-hand side. It's a very flowing section here. We use a lot of the curbs here as that can gain you a lot of time. Important not to cut too much as the track cuts are quite vicious if you go a little bit too far over the limit. Heading now down towards turn 11. This one's all about the exits. We've got the long back straight coming up afterwards. We drift to the apex a little bit in the braking zone, which actually gets us into the corner, but we get a bit of a snap, but nothing to worry about too much. Now you can breathe a little bit after that section as we head down towards the third sector, which is arguably where the time is going to be won and lost, as it's a very technical sector, and it's really important to take it easy and minimize the oversteer. Looking for just about 125 meters before the corner, get it turned in, don't use too much of the curb on the entry, and back over to the left-hand side. You can carry more speed than you think through this corner, and then get back on the power nice and early, but important to keep tight to the second apex to get back over to the right-hand side for turn 15. To turn 15 we go. We want to get back on the power nice and early, as we've got a long flat-out section now. Want to try and take this next few corners flat out. It is going to be difficult for those with ballast, especially those at the top of the championship, heading towards 50 kilos almost. Into turn 19, it's a bit blind, but you've got to throw it in and hope you've got the line right a little bit. And we use all the curb on the exit here. Don't get too greedy with the apex curbs on the final corner, and then power it out, and that is a lap of Circuit of the Americas.
Well, a brilliant look there at the Circuit of the Americas, and we head now into the closing stages, actually, of the qualifying session, of what looks like being one of the tightest qualifying sessions of the season so far. The time is about to tick down to 0, but in theory, we could still be about 2.5 minutes away from the end of the session, because once drivers start a lap, they are entitled to finish that lap, even if the checkered flag subsequently comes out. It's this man who is currently fastest then, Kyle Felvers, 2 minutes 17.471, but Jack, we're at by far the longest circuit we've raced at so far, possibly the longest of the whole season, yet the top two, the two front row sitters at the moment, separated by less than a tenth.
Yeah, but I've been keeping an eye on the times while we were going through our hot lap and discussing all things touring car related earlier. And Carl Felvers has only really done one of these lap times, whereas Eric Axelsson has been roughly around the 2:17.5 mark for the majority of the session. So even though Carl Felvers, he's picked him over the course of a race distance. What I would say is if this was a 40-minute race, I would put my money on Axelsson. But Carl Felvers can clearly, pick it out the bag, and if he starts on pole, track position could mean everything. If he uses the hybrid right, it could be really interesting. But you're absolutely right. The fact that these two are so close over a 2:17 lap should mean we're in for an absolutely brilliant night of racing.
No, I quite agree, and I think this circuit will lend itself to this car as well. Oh, very sideways there for Carl Felvers as he throws it into the tight left-hander here, heading through this triple apex right-hander, which is certainly a challenge, trying to figure out which of those apexes you should be prioritising, but Carl Felvers gets through there pretty well. This will be his final attempt at a flying lap. Remember, the times tick down to 0, and Kyle runs very wide out of the penultimate corner and heads into the final turn. Eric Axelsson has crashed, apparently coming into the pit lane. That is something rather out of character for the round 1 winner. Felvers goes through, does not improve his lap time. Josh Martin, therefore, one of the last few who could, and he is bringing his car now, again, sideways through this triple apex right-hander towards the end of the lap. He's clearly pushing hard here, Jack.
He is indeed, but he's got a car on the inside. That might have put him off a little bit for Josh Martin. He's going to bail into the pits by the looks of it as well. Is there a flailing Eric Axelsson? No, there isn't. A couple of drivers maybe even running out of fuel, because that was one going very, very slowly, and that might have been the reason why we had a car, there we go, on the left-hand side. I reckon he's rolling to the pits there. Not entirely sure who it is, to be honest. It's not Joel Lask. It is Joel Lask, actually, isn't it? This is interesting. I'll need to have a look on the ruling, but is he trying to crawl back to the pits to try and just, cause the checkered flag, because if he spawns back to the pits, he'll be disqualified.
Yes, I suppose if you're stopped on track, we've had this before, haven't we? Ironically, where drivers have run out of fuel in qualifying, they've just sort of pulled off track and stayed there, because you're right, as soon as you come back to the pit lane, you're not allowed back out anyway. But the session being over, there's nothing really stopping him from heading into the pit lane. Anyway, we'll get to that in a moment. We will have all of the post-qualifying information in a moment or two, just on the other side of this break. Qualifying complete here at the Circuit of the Americas for rounds number 4 of the AGON by AOC Mazda MX5 Cup. Rounds 4 and 5 coming to you here this evening, back to the sprint race format. And we have some big news for you all, because for the first time in 6 qualifying sessions here on the VRRC, it is not Eric Axelsen on pole position. Instead, Kyle Felvers has managed to take the pole position and will start from the ideal spot to try and claim his second victory of the season. Kyle joins us now. Congratulations, you finally knocked the qualifying king off his throne. That must feel good.
Yeah, it does feel good. My reaction that I had definitely shows for that. I wish when Eric pulled into the pits, I then realised that was hopefully pole, unless Josh was going to get it.
It was a close run thing, though. Very fine margins, actually, between you top 3. We were just chatting during the break there. We're expecting a close race between the 3 of you. I'm sure you are too. It's going to be a very competitive one, this, I think.
Yeah, it is, because we've had a change in the tyres on how they sort of wear out, so softs aren't going to be as overpowered as they have been in the past few rounds, so it's going to be interesting to see what people do.
And that is tricky around here, because it's a very long lap, it's a very technically demanding one, and of course these cars don't produce anything really in the way of aerodynamics. It's all about mechanical grip. If you do burn out those tyres too early, you're going to be in trouble later on, and I'd imagine burning out the tyres is quite easy to do around here.
Yeah, it is, because you slide a lot around this track. There's a lot of corners where the sort of curbs aren't your friends really. So if you're gonna try and make any tyres work, you've got to be very gentle around this.
Race win would be nice, of course. It would certainly help you in the championship. And I know you've really targeted the championship this season, haven't you? You're back in a rear-wheel drive sports car. Had a solid first few races, not been off the podium yet. But how important is it, even from this early stage of the season, to be thinking consistency and points and thinking about what it's going to take to win the championship?
Yeah, consistency is key. I mean, as long as I can keep, hopefully, really close to the top every single race, including reverse grids, should be good, and it should make a good fight with Eric and Joel and everyone that's at the top.
Yeah, indeed. Well, we're looking forward to watching it. Congratulations, really big congratulations, actually, on that pole position, Kyle. And best of luck for the first race.
Thank you.
So Kyle Felvers then, Jack, has done it. He has taken a pole position. He's done what we all thought was impossible, and he's demoted Eric Axelsen from pole position. Eric, of course, though, is still up there on the front row of the grid. I've got a really good feeling about this race, based on the lap times, not only in that qualifying session and in the practice session earlier on today. The battle between those three, I think, is going to be very, very evenly matched, and it could well come down to what Carl was saying there, these new soft tyres.
Yeah, that's going to throw a bit of a spanner in the works. It's something that we're going to have to get used to. Obviously, we sort of got used to the soft tyres, and especially last week at the Road America, drivers, there was really only one strategy to be on. It was soft and then go on to the softs again. Whereas now here, with 2 20-minute races, we're questioning whether the softs will even last those, that 20 minutes before dropping off. I think it's going to be a conversation point. I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to seeing what the drivers probably put in a little bit of extra practice to try and get used to the different compounds. But maybe we'll see a couple of other strategies, and it'd be nice to see a little bit more of a drop-off, to be honest, so we can see the mediums and the hards really come into their own.
Indeed so, yes, that is going to be interesting. It's funny, isn't it? We've spoken a lot about tyres and strategy in the longer races. We go back to the shorter 20-minute races, and suddenly that becomes an even bigger talking point. So, yes, this will be interesting. Kyle Felvers then will start from pole position. He is the man on the left of the screen as we look at them lined up 2 by 2 on the grid. Eric Axelsen, the green car, alongside him. Remember that in the championship, though, once we apply those pesky dropped scores, Joel Lask is actually the points leader, and he is starting way down in 8th position on the grid. Didn't have a great qualifying session there, did Joel? We saw him running out of fuel seemingly right at the end, but he hadn't been able to set a particularly good lap up until that point. Anyway, what progress can he make? What's going to happen at the front of the grid? Well, we'll find out now, because 20 minutes of MX5 racing here at the Circuit of the Americas gets underway with a good start made by Axelsen. Felvers tries to come over and block him, but there's no way he's going to do that. Axelsen already has his foot in the door and has the preferred inside line for the very, very tight turn 1 at the top of the hill. Right around the outside goes Felvers. He's left no room on the exit. Thankfully, plenty of time at runoff area, though, and that allows him not only to not lose control, but to keep his foot in it and power his way back into the lead. So Felvers leads, then Axelsen second, Martin third, Ethan Hill, Nicky Taylor fifth as they head for the S's for the first time.
Yeah, but Eric Axelsen, if you remember back to Road America, got an absolutely rocket start this time last week. Well, he got a similarly decent start today, but it wasn't enough to throw Kyle Felvers off his game. But you can see the amount of pressure, Andy, that he's trying to put the young lad under. He's absolutely throwing everything at it as they go through the S's. I think that's supposed to copy Silverstone's Maggots Beckett section of the circuit. I don't think anybody quite enjoys it as much as the Maggots Beckett section, but here we are. Nicky Taylor and Ethan Hill having a nice little battle as well, as we're just having a look. Where is Joel Lask? He's up to 6th place now. He's made up 2 positions. He's a lot of work to do.
Oh, except he's off. He's off. He's had a half spin coming out of the hairpin. So, yeah, you're right. He made some good progress, but now all of that is lost. More. Joel Lask, interestingly, is on the medium tyres. So is Andy Carroll. Everybody else going for the soft. So it was particularly impressive that Lask was making progress, given the fact he was in theory on the slower tyre, at least for the start of the race, and he was positioning himself in a good place to actually benefit from perhaps the tyre wear of the other cars later on. But now he's got some work to do to close back in. Eric Axelsen, meanwhile, into the lead of the race, and we have now had our first proper lead change, and I don't think Kyle Felvers wants him to stay there, because he gives him a big headbutt into the corner. Out wide goes Axelsen, and if I were Kyle, I would be making absolutely sure that I did not benefit from that, because that was very close to a push to pass.
Yep, you're absolutely right, but I'll tell you one driver who probably will benefit, and it's the man in 3rd place, Josh Martin. Kyle actually did quite well just to not let him pass. Having said that, he opens the door, and through goes Martin, not quite through the penultimate corner. What's the run like going to be into the final corner, though? Of course, a run over the start-finish line is probably arguably more important, with a lot of opportunity for drafting. Now Kyle Felvers and Eric Axelsen straight on that hybrid button. Josh Martin maybe saving himself just a touch. Might have a bit of an attack from Nicky Taylor. I'm sure Kyle Felvers will be hoping he is. Anyway, to looking to the inside goes Kyle, and Eric Axelsen covers that one off. Is the momentum going to be enough for Kyle Felvers? He did it over the first corner just a lap ago. It looks like he's going to just about lose out on that race lead now.
This is excellent racing so far, isn't it? Lots of door-to-door stuff between these two, and neither wanting to give the other an inch here. Through the S's they go. They're actually gapping Josh Martin, surprisingly. I say surprisingly, since they're really duking it out, these two. You'd think that would be holding them up, but Martin actually feeling the pressure now from Nicky Taylor and Ethan Hill. Here comes Felvers again. Very different line there through into this final bit of the S's. Tries to go right round the outside. That gives him the inside for the left-hander. Beautiful driving that from Kyle Felvers, and he's back in front, but Axelsen immediately tries to fight back. It looks like these two are just as evenly matched in race trim as they were in the qualifying session earlier on. They can get the lead from each other, but neither, as of yet, able to escape.
I don't think I've seen anybody make quite a cleanest pass in that section of the track in any discipline as Kyle Felvers just made it look then. It was absolutely sublime. And I love the fact that Axelsen almost let him have it but came straight back at him, and he's still going hammer and tongs as well. Johnny look to the outside. They're not worrying about slipstream on Josh Martin just yet. Josh is actually pretty much nowhere near. You're right. He's been dropped somewhat, even though he's in that slipstream. And these two are fighting. Carl Felver's looking to the inside. He's very narrow. Is that going to hurt him on the way out? Well, Josh Martin decided to take as much track as humanly possible, and then some. Eric Axelson getting a bit of a nicer line, but then having to go narrow. This is real cat and mouse stuff. And just like a lap ago, Andy, Josh Martin is right there.
And Felvers is back up the inside again. I've lost count now of how many lead changes we've had between these two. It's happening almost at every corner right now. And Lewis Edwards, I can see in our broadcast chat, has just taken the words out of my mouth. How much of an effect is this having on tyres? Because they don't appear to be managing their tyres at all. Whereas Josh Martin behind, perhaps the reason that he keeps dropping back through some of the more technical sections is because he's deliberately looking after the tyres, and knowing that with a slipstream and the fact they're battling ahead, he doesn't have to work the tyres too hard in order to keep up with them. If that is what he's doing, then that could be really, really clever stuff, but he has certainly latched back onto their tail now as they come through at the end of lap number 2.
Yeah, the problem with defending is even though you're trying to look after your tyres and everything, you're going to put the power on just that touch earlier, which might increase wheel spin. You're going to turn in a little bit tighter because you're on the inside of the circuit. That scrubs the front right and the front left as well. And all these things just add up over the course of a 20-minute race. So really, that could end up maybe degrading your tyres half a lap or even a lap earlier than you were expecting. We're not entirely sure what the data is going to show. I'm sure a lot of these drivers have done plenty of practice. But this is a real good test. How much does fighting hurt the tyres? Does Josh Martin come back at the end? Or do we get a surprise Joel Lask jumping up 5 positions because he's just faster than everybody else on that medium tyre? It's absolutely fascinating. Elliot Dalton-Ayres looking up the inside of Ethan Hill. Not happening just yet. He can't quite pull off a Carl Felvis for the time being, but he sure is trying to put on a show.
Yeah, looking at Joel Lask, he is a long way off the lead. That's his problem. And, of course, has a lot of overtaking to do in order to get there. So, you know, this race will go by quite quickly. They're long laps. You won't get a lot of laps in over the 20 minutes, really. We're already into the second quarter now of this 20-minute race. And I'm not convinced that he's going to have time to get back up there. But we shall see. The leader, Carl Felvis, by the way, nearly a second clear now. He's really been hitting the hybrid hard on this lap to try and break away from Axelson and Martin. So it's just strung out slightly in the front, with plenty of battling further back, though. Even the fight for the wooden spoon, because Sam Zero here is trying to get himself out of 12th and last place and up the inside of John Jones as they go down this long back straight. He's got that inside line. He will attempt to be braver on the brakes, which he is, gets to the apex first and takes away that 11th position from John Jones. Reece Bell, just up the road from them, is in 10th position, with Andy Carroll just inside the top 10 right now in P9. But the battling at the front for the time being, Jack, just starting now to calm down.
Yeah, well, for the first time in 6.5 minutes, I think that was a pretty good start. Pretty good start to the evening as well, and maybe the Circuit of the Americas, we were underestimating how good the racing was going to be. Sam Zero and John Jones are basically fighting for who's not going to get pole position in the second race, of course, because unlike last week, and if you need your memory being jogged, second race, second 20 minutes, will be a reverse grid, full reverse grid as well. We're not messing around with any top 10s or anything. We're going to stick the winners right to the back and see what they can do and give the rear runners, shall we call them, a chance at glory. And that's what we like to do here at VRRC, and it always does promote some exciting racing, so looking forward to that one. But we don't need any more excitement, to be honest, because these two are serving up a right treat. Normally the first race is a little bit dull, if we're honest, because qualifying dictates where everybody should be, but we should have known, Andy, and in fact you actually predicted, didn't you? 300ths of a second, you were excited for it, and they're not letting you down.
Indeed, yes. It proves that I am right occasionally. I mean, it's just something about this circuit, I think. Yes, maybe. I'm learning as the years go by. Something about this circuit, though, and these cars, it just really does seem to generate this kind of racing. Okay, these two are now breaking away from the rest of them, but they're not really breaking away from each other because the slipstream is just so powerful around here. And add in the extra factor of the tyre management, and you've got some very exciting racing. That was a very exciting braking zone for Eric Axelson. I paused for a second because I thought he was going to get into the back of Carl Felvis, return the favour after Carl headbutted him on the first lap, but they just about kept it clean.
Yeah, they did, which is what I'm enjoying as well, most of all, I'd say, in this battle, is yes, Carl Felvis could have got into the race lead by bumping Eric out the way, and but he didn't. He let Eric back through almost. He let him get away a little bit, and obviously, even though he was under threat from Josh Martin, they kept him nice and clean. And since then, as well, Eric has basically repaid the favour by being as clean as possible with him. So it's what we like to see. It's what we promote here at VRRC. And as Andy Carroll slots his way up the inside of what is, I mean, I don't want to say a flailing Joel Lask, but certainly an out of character Joel Lask here, I think.
It's an off the pace Joel. Oh, well, never mind. Andy Carroll goes off. That was a beautiful move he just pulled on Joel Lask, and then an equally beautiful pirouette through the grass. But sadly, this manoeuvre is losing him time rather than gaining him position, so he will rejoin right at the back. But yeah, Joel Lask mysteriously off the pace. Ordinarily, I'd suggest that he might have sustained some damage perhaps in that contact on the first lap, but he was off the pace in qualifying as well. So, you know, he qualified 8th, he's running 8th, and in fact, just briefly there, fell down to 9th place. The reversed grid could perhaps be his one chance to salvage something from the night. Right, we are 40 seconds away from the halfway mark. We've just had another lead change now, with Eric Axelsen sweeping past Kyle Felvers up the main straight, and then instantly going defensive into the first corner to prevent Felvers from striking back at him. They've built up now a 1.5 second cushion over Josh Martin in third, who in turn is nearly 2 seconds clear of Nicky Taylor. So these two are free to battle, I think, now, Jag, without imminently having to worry about the arrival of Martin on their case.
The fascinating thing is, on that previous lap, Eric Axelsen went purple in Sector 1, Kyle Felvers went purple Sector 2, and Josh Martin went purple Sector 3. Which is, I mean, there's some kind of natural OCD satisfaction there, isn't there, with the way that they're ordered right now. But it is a fascinating that these guys are so close, and they're still putting in fastest laps of the race. Maybe they did use a little bit more hybrid than before, Kyle Felvers and Eric Axelsen. Eric Axelsen certainly has, on the previous couple of laps, started to initiate that boost button a little bit more often as he goes slightly defensive, and Kyle Felvers will get the nice sweep, and he'll be able to get on the power earlier. He'll get that rear rotated and see if he can get on the power, get in the slipstream. He's on the hybrid button. Here comes Kyle Felvers for yet another. He's almost squeezed off the road, taking off the road markings. Josh Martin's not worried about the slipstream at all, as Eric Axelsen has to deal with the rear bumper of Kyle Felvers yet again.
It's a very, very wide MX5 that Eric Axelsen suddenly find himself driving there. I'm a bit surprised he was quite that robust in his defence. He's back up the inside of Felvers again at the end of the straight, and now they are starting to lose a little bit of time, a tenth or so here and there to Josh Martin behind them. Side by side again into the right-hander, but Felvers parks his car on the apex, and that was always going to happen if Axelsen tried to squeeze through the gap on the inside. Very feisty racing though. I'm kind of surprised. I mean, more so for Eric. It's not that I'm saying Kyle is a dirty driver, he absolutely isn't, but Kyle is a driver who's not backwards in coming forward, so you kind of expect him to want to get to the lead and hang on to it. But I'm sort of surprised that Eric is quite so keen to get immediately back ahead of him, or indeed stay ahead of him. This is a very aggressive drive from Eric, a little more perhaps, dare I say, than we're used to seeing.
Yeah, well, I think with Kyle, let's face it, it's easy to forget that Kyle is a teenager most of the time, but then every so often you see a race and you think, oh, yeah, no, there's his age again. So it's a few sort of sporadic decisions making, shall we say. But right now, Eric is fighting tooth and nail with him. And to be honest, I reckon they're both loving it. One driver who probably is loving it as well is Josh Martin, who's sort of all of a sudden turned the wick up and decided to get on the back of this little battle. Maybe he was just waiting. I've seen in the YouTube chat, JZ Dave, who I believe is Josh Martin's friend and did a shoey when Josh Martin took a race victory a couple of seasons ago. He came on. Josh Martin is waiting for it to hit the fan. I won't describe what it is. I think everybody can understand what he means. But he's basically waiting for these two maybe to have a bit of an accident, maybe a bit of contact. Hasn't happened just yet, but to be fair, I wouldn't blame him for waiting for it, Andy. These two have been rubbing his racing quite a lot so far.
Absolutely, and even if they don't have an accident, which let's hope they don't, even if they don't actually hit each other, they're delaying each other so much that Josh Martin is able to coast up onto their tail, probably using less of his tyres, less hybrid. Certainly, he has 9 hybrid uses left to Felvers' 6th and the leader's 8 hybrids remaining, so he's got an advantage on that, and he's perhaps looking after his tyres better. Actually might be able to just sweep past the pair of them if they start tripping over each other on the final lap or so. So, you know, Josh Martin, we see him frequently coming on strong at the end of the race, and I wonder if we're going to see the same sort of thing now. We're about 2/3 of the way through this very exciting 4th round of the championship. Eric Axelsen leads, but Kyle Felvers was thinking about going up the inside. Axelsen moves across late there to defend, but manages to hook up the apex and get off the corner. Still with the race lead. I am noticing though, Jack, that the cars are certainly looking a lot less stable now than they were 10 minutes or so ago. I think these soft tyres are a little past their best now.
Yeah, I'm thinking that as well. Their last lap compared to their best lap were 2 seconds different. They're 2 seconds slower now, and that's across the board pretty much, apart from Josh Martin, who's somehow within half a second of his best lap. Not entirely sure how he's done that. Probably a mixture of slipstream and the fact that he wasn't quite in the rhythm early on. And I'm just looking down, I was thinking maybe that means that Joel Lask has found a little bit of pace in himself as well, and obviously those tyres have held on for a little bit longer. Unfortunately not. He's lapping approximately 2 minutes 21 seconds, which again is about 2 or 3 seconds off of his best time this race as well. So the mediums aren't seen to be holding on to much better than the softs at the moment. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, though, holding on to the back of Ethan Hill's car. We haven't yet seen these two actually make any kind of moves on each other, have they? They've been sat there with Hill in second and Dalton-Ayres in sixth for pretty much this entire race.
Yeah, exactly. This has been a very close battle. Dalton-Ayres and Hill nose to tail as they make their way into turn one. Jens Verhoeven actually trying to close in on them, and I think succeeding in doing so right now. And then, yeah, you're absolutely right. Joel Lask just absolutely nowhere, and that must just be something about this track that he doesn't like. And I get that. It's a difficult track. It's certainly not a track that has a great rhythm to it, I've found. I've often struggled around here myself as well. And yeah, Joel perhaps just not gelling with this one, and will be very grateful not only to get out of the Circuit of the Americas, but very grateful for drop scores as well, because that's going to come to his rescue, I think. Right, back to the lead battle now. We're heading into the final quarter of the race, 5 and a bit minutes to go, and it's still Axelsen who leads. It does seem, doesn't it, Jack, that every time Felvers gets in front, Eric seems to have an answer for him. It's an immediate response as well, and when he gets in front he seems to be able to stay there a bit longer. We'll see whether Kyle can get back past him down the back straight, but Axelsen perhaps the one who looks the stronger right now.
Yeah, I think he feels like he's probably got this under control, whereas Carl Felvers maybe looks like he's chasing a little bit more. That doesn't necessarily mean that Carl Felvers is going to lose this race. He could still. I mean, Max Verstappen always looks like he's chasing a race. Hamilton always looks like he's controlling a race, pretty much. Or it certainly looked that way in previous years. Maybe not so much anymore. But it quite often it creates quite a good dynamic, and it's always very exciting when they get together. And then you've got Josh Martin, obviously, just adding that little bit of extra spice, trying to take any advantage that you can. You're absolutely right. I think Carl Felvers, he'll be probably trying to hold on to his tyres a little bit longer. Maybe he's thinking that they're going a little bit quicker than he thought because of the aggressive nature in which he's been driving. Axelsen, we know, is very good on his tyres normally, although he's been driving a little bit more aggressively, like you alluded to earlier. So this is going to be a bit of a hard one. I'm excited to see how it all ends up. I'm excited to see Carl have a little bit more oomph about him into the final couple of laps, and already look, he's getting onto that apex, trying to get it up early to try and get on that power to get into turn one. It hasn't quite worked out for him as he hits the power button, and Josh Martin is there having a little bit of a go to the outside of turn one. Josh Martin may well have slid himself into second place for the first time this race. Carl Felvers is on the inside. It's always going to be difficult for Josh Martin, but there's a little crumb of intent from the third place driver.
This is music to the ears of Eric Axelsen, who suddenly now starts to build up a bit of a buffer. I don't think Eric is as worried about Martin as he is Felvers on raw pace. Kyle Felvers, I think, is the closest to Axelsen, certainly based upon what we saw in qualifying. That was the case. So if Kyle now gets swept up in a battle with Josh Martin and allows Axelsen to pull a second or so on them, then that might just be enough for him to claim his second win of the season. We've had 3 races so far this season, 3 different winners, remember. Axelsen won round 1 at Laguna Seca, the reversed grid race was won by Felvers, and then Joel Lask was victorious in the first of our pit stop races a week ago at Road America. So Josh Martin looking to try and become the 4th different winner from 4 races, but he will have some real work to do in order to get back up there. Now, interestingly there, Jack, through that one braking zone, seemingly, Felvers got right back with Axelsen. So Axelsen may be going well through the corners, but actually I think that if Felvers can shake off Josh Martin, he might just have an answer for the race leader.
Yeah, but Eric Axelsen's answer will be the hybrid, won't it? Because he's got more in his back pocket than Carl Felvers, who has only got 1 left in the last 2.5 minutes of what will be the end of this lap, and probably 1 more. Well, it will be 1 more. Whereas Eric has 3. Josh Martin, I can't quite see it. It's a little bit pixelated. Is that 3 or 5?
I think it's 5.
5, yeah. So all of a sudden, Josh is in a pretty happy situation right now, I imagine. He's only about a second away from the race leader, and that extra 50 horsepower or so could mean an awful lot of points for him coming his way towards the end of this one. 2 minutes to go. As I said, it'll be the end of this lap plus 1 more. Still lots of racing left to do.
Certainly is. No, I think this will be the final lap, will it not, that we're going on to? They were lapping in the... what were the lap times now? Pull up the live timing. Yeah, over 2 minutes, aren't they? So yeah, this will be the final lap. Apologies if that is what you actually just said, Jack. Leaders, though, out of the last corner, and now Carl Felvis knows that it is now or never. But where do you make the move? Because if he gets ahead into turn 1, then he knows that Axelsen will come straight back at him down the back straight again. Also, he doesn't have the hybrid advantage over the race leader either, although Axelsen down to 2 hybrids now. Josh Martin could be in the catbird seat from that perspective. Very wide through the first corner for Axelsen, wide on the exit for Josh Martin. Felvis the neatest through there, but not necessarily the quickest.
Yeah, well, I think turn 12 which is the 12th turn, because the Americans are very creative with how they name their corners. That's probably where you're going to see it, and that's where we've seen the likes of Axelsen really having to shove Carl Felvis all the way off the road in a defensive manoeuvre, and that is also where Carl Felvis caught the most under braking on that previous lap. Eric Axelsen has a little bit of a tendency to just break into the apex, break towards the apex, rather than Carl Felvis is approaching. There's a massive hit at the backside. Carl Felvis has ended Eric Axelsen's attempt at a race victory. Now, Carl Felvis normally will sort of try and give the position back if possible. I think Josh Martin is in for a race win here, because Carl Felvis won't want to win this in bad blood. It's not who he is, and he'll probably get a penalty for it anyway, to be honest. But that is big news. Eric Axelsen all the way down to 4th now. Nicky Taylor up to 3rd.
Exactly, so a penalty for Felvis wouldn't benefit Axelsen that much, would it? Because neither of them now are likely to claim the race victory. Josh Martin, as you rightly said, 3/4 of a second up on Kyle Felvis as they head into the final sector of the lap. That, I'm afraid, I could see coming, because it is so hard to do to race as close together as they were throughout the whole race without making contact, and it's unfortunately sort of had to happen, didn't it? But Josh Martin, I'm sure, will be laughing his socks off right now, because he has inherited the race lead. Felvis, in fairness, is still throwing everything at this. Josh Martin on the hybrid there as he accelerates into the triple apex right-hander, and that just stretches the margin again slightly over Carl Felvis, barring any mistakes through the last couple of corners. It looks good for Josh Martin, but I am not giving him the race victory yet. He has to get through these last 2 corners without getting it wrong. Doesn't exactly make friends with the apex there, and Felvis really does throw the car through the corner. Thinks about going up the inside into the last turn. Not quite going to work, though. Josh Martin will accelerate out of the final corner up towards the finish line, and he will become the 4th different winner from the first 4 races this season. Congratulations to Josh Martin. Right place, right time, and he gets himself his first victory of the season. Felvis in 2nd, Nicky Taylor 3rd, and Eric Axelsen is off the podium for the first time this season. Yes, in fact, he hasn't finished worse than 2nd so far this season, and he ends up in 4th place in that one. Verhoeven in 5th. Dalton Ayres will be 6th ahead of Ethan Hill, and Joel Lask mysteriously off the pace tonight, down in 8th position ahead of Andy Carroll and Reece Bell to round out the top 10. Here they come. Carroll through the last corner. Fairly quiet race for him, apart from that spin, of course, that he had about halfway through the race. And he crosses the line in 9th with Reece Bell 10th, and John Jones the last of the finishers, because Sam Zero, I'm afraid, has pulled over on the final lap. So a very dramatic first race of the evening here from the Circuit of the Americas. We'll have all the reaction to that, and there'll be plenty of reaction, I'm sure, after this quick break. Fourth round of the AGON by AOC Mazda MX5 Cup was arguably race of the season so far. Certainly gave us a lot to talk about. We're going to talk about quite a bit of that now with our top 3 finishing drivers. Starting with our 4th different race winner from the first 4 races this season, Josh Martin. Right place, right time, definitely, but you put yourself in that position where you sort of close back in on the top 2 in the second half of the race. Did you ever predict, though, that the race win would be handed to you on a plate like that?
I thought, to be fair, I had a good chance at winning it on that last lap because I felt I was trying my best to save some tyre, but I was still struggling for that first sec to keep up with them. But I had so many hybrids on that last lap, I was just going to drain them all in that last lap, and I thought I had a good chance of just streaming past both of them, as I could see they had been using quite a lot of hybrids battling each other. But that definitely wasn't the way I expected to win, but I'll take it.
And of course, having got the lead, you then had to fend off Kyle over the last half a lap as well. We saw a couple of little mistakes creep in those final couple of corners. Kyle gave it a good go of getting back to you. Was that the nerves at being suddenly thrust into the race lead, or were you just running out of tyres?
My tyres were pretty gone, to be fair, but I was taking the biddies. I knew I had 2 hybrids near the end, so I had no reason to try and push around some of the final corners.
Well, whatever strategy you deployed in that race, it worked perfectly. You've got yourself a race win now. And to be fair, you've had a pretty solid start to the season. It's your first appearance on the podium. But do you think you've got the potential to go and become a regular winner and ultimately a championship contender?
Hopefully. I always seem to be a bit of a slow starter in these sim racing championships. It seems to take me a little while to get used to the cars. And I feel I'm still not where I was in the TCR car. But I'm getting quicker each week. And I thought I'd jowed a little bit more with the car this week than I did in the previous races. But no, hopefully I can be a bit more regularly on the podium from here to the end.
You've got that first one now, indeed a first win of the season in very dramatic style indeed. Josh, congratulations and best of luck now for race 2.
Brilliant, thank you very much.
So Josh Martin then becomes the 4th winner of the season, and Jack can now catch up with our runner-up, who I imagine, Jack, has quite a lot to tell us about that race.
Yeah, one of the less fortunate positions of being a racing driver is the awkward post-race conversations after an incident. And Kyle, unfortunately, that's an experience you're about to have. Talk us through that one, because I know you're feeling bad. I know you've already put it in the YouTube chat and from what we were talking about during the break. Talk us through it from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I do apologise to Eric again. I did not expect him to be... I'm not going to say so slow, but not as quick as he was before, because obviously he's entitled to go however he wants through the corner, but I didn't expect it, and caught me off guard, and yeah, I do apologise to Eric. But...
Well, we'll move on quickly then, because that's a very professional apology on stream. You had a brilliant race, though, with him, and it was a fantastically clean race, the majority of it, wasn't it? You must have been beaming from ear to ear for the majority. Yeah, I was loving it. It was great. Eric always gives great battles. He's an amazing driver and very clean all the time. So it was nice to race him, and just unfortunate, but yeah. Well, we'll obviously wait to see if there's any kind of penalties or anything like that, but congratulations on the 2nd place, and hopefully we'll be speaking to you after race 2. Thanks.
So Carl Felbus gets the 2nd place then, provisionally at least. Nicky Taylor suddenly appeared on the podium. And Nicky, I hope you'll forgive me for saying this, but I don't think I mentioned your name the whole race until you crossed the line in 3rd place. That was one of the quieter races you've had, but you stayed out of trouble, and you had the pace to pick up the pieces when it did go wrong up front and grab that first podium of the season.
Oh, mega. I was well chuffed. Literally, the minute Eric went round, I was like, for you. But yes, I've actually got an interview. So I was like... I was so happy, and honest to God, I was like, my main, what do I call it, goal for this championship is literally just to get a podium. So I'm happy that I've just got that podium now, and at the end of the day, this is a farewell championship for me anyway, so I didn't expect much. I don't really get along with this car at all, so for me to be actually anyway within the top 5 I'm happy with it.
Never known anyone to be quite so excited at the prospect of talking to me and Jab, but I'm here for it. That podium coming as a bit of a surprise, it sounds like, to you then. What is it about this car that you've just not quite gelled with?
it doesn't drive like a real world car like I would expect it to. It kind of drives very, very sim like, and to be fair, I should probably know that from driving in a sim. But yeah, it's I just don't go along with it, and I've only ever driven front wheel drive in apart from Porsche Cayman. So yeah, no, it's all right. Just getting used to it as we go along.
Well, podium's certainly not a terrible way to continue a season. In fact, you've not been out of the top 5 all that much this season either. So, Nicky, we'll wish you the best of luck for race 2, which I know is about to start. And indeed, he's gone already because the cars are on the grid and we are about ready to go racing then. The full reverse grid for our second race here at Circuit of the Americas puts John Jones and Reese Bell on the front row, and they will launch towards first corner. Well, John Jones did. I wouldn't exactly call that a launch for Reese Bell, who sort of trundles away from the line on the inside of row 1, giving John Jones a pretty much uncontested lead into turn number 1. Second place, though, is definitely being contested between Andy Carroll and Joel Lask. Joel Lask desperately in need of a good result here after losing loads of points in that disappointing first race, and he's trying now to get the better of Carroll for second place. Headed to the S's, he will do so. So Jones leads the way, Lask second, Carroll third, Ethan Hill in fourth, and that is Elliot Dalton-Ayres breaking through into 5th place.
Yeah, we've seen Joel Lask and Andy Carroll coming side by side together before. This is a big drifting moment for, who was that in the end? Sam Zera? No, Reese Bell, I think. Oh, Verhoeven, Reese Bell, I think they were all sideways, to be honest. And we see Elliot Dalton-Ayres going very wide as well. Joel Lask has gotten himself into the race lead, somehow. Eric Axelsen has gotten himself up to 6th place, almost into 5th, because John Jones is, I imagine, probably going to concede this without too much of a fuss, because he knows that Eric Axelsen is not a driver he's going to compete with for very many laps longer. Josh Martin trying to put the pressure on the 2 HFT teammates of Carl Felvis and Nicky Taylor. We've seen Josh throwing it in the mix with these two already before. Our race 1 winner trying to be the meat in the sandwich of an 8FT train at the moment, but it's not going to happen because he's going to go around about the outside of both of them potentially. Good driving this by Josh, but he's going to be on the outside into the braking zone. Carl Felvis in the lead of Nicky Taylor, but I think Josh is going to try and hold on, Andy.
Oh, well, Felvis tried to close the door on the exit, but Martin keeps on coming up the inside, right over the inside curb, and he's still there alongside Felvis now as they head into the 2 left-handers. Indeed, there's some contact. That delays Josh Martin and might just open the door for Taylor to go up the inside of both of them. It does. Nicky Taylor almost getting past his teammate as well, but now he is on the outside. This is so often the case around here. The inside for 1 or 2 corners becomes the outside for the next couple, and so Taylor slips back behind Josh Martin. This is really delaying Martin, though, and one of his sparring partners, in fact, Martin and Felvis' sparring partner from race 1, Eric Axelsen, is already off and gone. He is in 4th position and bearing down on the podium places as we come towards the end of the first lap, a lap that will be led by Joel Lask. And his plan now, Jack, is fairly simple, as there's a big moment for Felvis out of the last corner. Lask's job is simple: get away before the quick guys get through, because I don't think Joel Lask has the pace here, merit, it must be said, to beat the likes of Axelsen, Felvis and Martin in a straight race.
Yeah, but I don't think he's going to have that long to enact that plan for himself, unfortunately, because Eric Axelsen is already onto the podium positions. Elliot Dalton-Ayres followed him through on Andy Carroll. I say followed him through, actually. They're pretty much side by side as they go through turn 2 and into the S's. And Joel Lask, though, how big is the gap for the time being? It's 1.3 seconds, I believe, 1.2 maybe. It's actually coming down slightly as Carl Felvis has gotten past John Jones. He's broken away from his teammate Nicky Taylor. He's got Andy Carroll up ahead of him, who we've seen Andy Carroll, unfortunately, not really hold on to the positions all that well so far here at the Circuit of the Americas. That may well be the case for Carl Felvis. He's going through the exact portion of the track where he made contact with Eric Axelsen just a couple of minutes ago, but he gets through nice and clean. Andy Carroll holding on to the position just basically to try and hold on to the lap time more than anything. I don't think he's really worried about trying to keep Carl Felvis behind him, and indeed slots in and tries to probably get back on that slipstream as soon as humanly possible. Joel Lask leading by 1.5 seconds. Ethan Hill in 2nd place, and then you've got 1 second back to what I was going to say, race 1 podium sitter, but of course he wasn't. He ended up in 4th place, Eric Axelsen.
Indeed, so he's there with a point to prove, I think, in this race, isn't he? Things just settling down slightly now as they head up the back straight for the second time. A 1.5 second cushion for Lask back to Ethan Hill, who actually he seems a bit quicker than right now. Ethan is being caught by Axelsen, but not all that rapidly. Dalton-Ayres in 4th. Felvis, as we're seeing, is in 5th position ahead of Andy Carroll, with Nicky Taylor 7th and Josh Martin in 8th. So Josh Martin, for me there, the big loser, actually, of the early exchanges, because he's not made anything like the progress he should have done. He almost did, and then ended up getting delayed in some of those side-by-side battles, so really got ganged up on slightly by the HFT racing duo, and so he will be a little disappointed, I think, now to still be languishing down in 8th place.
Yeah, I think you're right, and he'll probably have to start using the hybrid a little bit more as well, just to make up the positions where Eric Axelsson, he took advantage of a lot of slow cars in front of him, was able to pick them off without having to use the hybrid, because everybody was a lot closer, and therefore he's got a lot more to use for the rest of the race to get into the race lead and then pull away. Carl Felvers, though, is used as much as anybody. He's only got 9 left as Nicky Taylor initiates, and so does Elliot Dalton-Ayres to go down to 9 as well. But yeah, Carl Felvers actually using a lot of hybrid to try and get through the order. Nicky Taylor carving his way through on Andy Carroll. This is Eric Axelsson. Eric Axelsson sideways on the apex there. We were just saying how well he'd been doing. I have no idea what happened to him, but he's now down into 5th, potentially 6th place, and I'm sure Carl Felvers will be hoping Nicky Taylor does him a favour and keeps him behind.
And that is Ethan Hill in the pit lane. Now, was Ethan Hill not the next car? No,
he was second.
Yes, he was.
He was
yes,
second.
he was. Right, okay. You can see where I'm going with that, can't you? I suspect perhaps the two are not are linked, maybe. So Ethan Hill then into the pit lane. Joel Lask suddenly has a 4-second lead over Elliot Dalton-Ayres in 2nd place. Felvers is now on the podium in 3rd, and you can see right on the tail now of Dalton-Ayres as they drop down the hill, and will surely try and make that move before too much longer. Forces Elliot to defend into the hairpin, and that wide sweeping line on the way into and through the corner should yield a bit more exit speed there from Kyle Felvers. So Dalton-Ayres, I fear his time in 2nd place could be short-lived. They're all on the hybrid as they head up the back straight. They're also all, I noticed, Jack, on the soft tyre in this race. So despite the higher wear rate of these soft tyres, it's still a popular choice.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The mediums clearly didn't work for the likes of Joel Lask. He switched to the softs. And I think there was one other driver as well who was potentially on the mediums. Carl Felvers around the outside, though. We shouldn't ignore that move because it was a very nice move late on the brakes. Maybe he used a little bit of the exit track, shall we say, a little bit wide. But he's managed to make it stick. He's in 2nd place. He's got Elliot Dalton-Ayres in between himself and his teammate. But more importantly, he's got 2 drivers, i.e. Elliot Dalton-Ayres and Nicky Taylor, in between himself and Eric Axelsson. And then you got Josh Martin. You said Josh hadn't had a brilliant start. Well, it doesn't look that bad anymore in comparison to the others, does it? Because he's right on the rear end of Eric. He's right on the rear end of the top 5. Joel Lask is actually extending his race lead at the moment. He's over 4 seconds now because these guys are fighting.
Exactly, yeah, this has worked out beautifully for Lask, hasn't it? And you're right, Josh Martin right back in this again now, although I fear that it will just be a battle for 2nd, really. Felvers, Dalton-Ayres, Taylor, Axelsson and Martin, and indeed Andy Carroll, all in this long line, 6 of them together as they head for turn number 1, because Carl Felvers, having got past Elliot Dalton-Ayres, cannot shake him off, and Elliot actually has his nose ahead briefly there on the outside line into turn number 1. They all hop over the apex curb, trying to shorten the route through the corner as much as possible, and Kyle Felvers now finding that when you're at the head of a group of MX5s like this, it's a very, very hard place to be because you are giving a slipstream to all of the cars behind you and not receiving one yourself. Ideally, he would love to have Nicky Taylor, I think, behind him. Then they could work together to, A, pull away from the group behind, and B, maybe try and reel in the race leader, who is just over 4 seconds clear as they make their way through the S's for the 4th time, with Lask, yeah, a nice little cushion this for Joel, and he is now in a good position, Jack, where he can maybe try and manage those tyres, just in case they do get to him in the latter part of the race.
Well, I'm just going to harp on the points that you were mentioning just then about Carl Felvers leading the pack instead of chasing, and it's similar to what you were talking about in race number 1, where we felt like Axelsson had a little bit more control of the race. When he got into the lead, Carl Felvers had to work very hard to take it off him, whereas when Kyle got into the lead, Axelsson had an almost instantaneous reaction to get back into the lead. He was quick behind, he was quick in front, whereas Kyle maybe struggled with leading a little bit, going into a few of the corners and trying to maximize the grip, or maybe just the slipstream obviously wasn't really in his favor. So maybe that's what we're seeing a little bit here, which is why Joel Lask, although he's being caught, not being caught as much as we thought over the course of a couple of laps. 11.5 minutes to go. I'm not going to say that Joel's going to have an easy time. All I'm going to say is that he's probably going to get to half race distance without too much pressure.
Yes, indeed. What, of course, he doesn't have, though, is race experience on the soft tyre, because he was on the medium in race number 1. So he's built up this nice lead. He's been using quite a lot of hybrid, I notice. He's down to 7 already, which is kind of the average for the front runners, but you'd think with a lead he might be able to save some of that hybrid. He has not, and so I wonder whether maybe he's also cooking those tyres, because on this lap alone, the gap has come down by over half a second. So Kyle Felvers, now that he has shaken off Elliot Dalton-Ayres a little bit, is starting to go quite a bit more quickly than the race race leader, who again jumps on the hybrid up the main straight. And interestingly, Felvers, Dalton-Ayres and Taylor chasing him do not do the same thing. So it's down to 3.6 seconds now with 10.5 minutes to go. The fastest lap of the race now belongs to Kyle Felvers. So he is charging, he's pushing to try and catch Joel Lask. And if Joel really does start to run out of tyres in the latter part of the race, that could just happen.
Yeah, you're absolutely right, and I've seen that. We've been touching on the tyre situation in the Discord chat that we have for our broadcasters and directors and everything else like that. And to be honest, we don't think. Yeah, there's been a little bit of a change in the soft compound. We've tried to make it so that they drop off a little bit quicker, although maybe maximise their grip earlier, shall we say? And the mediums just. You're under the opinion, Andy, that they just don't seem to work for this particular track because the track demands so much grip to go quickly.
Yeah, well, I touched on this in my chat with Carl Felvers after qualifying about how you need the mechanical grip round here. There are just so many corners. It's something like 23 corners, I think, around Circuit of the Americas. They're all kind of low or medium speed corners, so you need the traction coming off the corners. These are rear-wheel drive cars, so you've got to have that traction to push you off the tight corners like the hairpin we just saw. And then through all of these sort of mid-corner, mid-speed corners, the change of direction, you're sliding the car around so much that is definitely going to wear the tyre, but you need the mechanical grip underneath you. And I just think that the harder compounds aren't giving that grip, so you've kind of got no choice but to go for the soft compound, knowing that you're going to run out of grip in the latter stages. I just think that is the lesser of two evils almost. But I do worry that Joel Lask, perhaps going into uncharted territory now, into this second half of the race on the soft tyres, is starting to struggle, because that gap now, Jack, is under 3 seconds.
Yeah, and that previous lap, when we're about to finish another lap, of course, in a couple of seconds' time, but previous lap, Carl Felvers, 2 minutes 17.5, Joel Lask, 2 minutes 18.2. About 7 to 8 tenths difference just on one lap alone. Now, admittedly, they don't go through many laps around here in 20 minutes because it is such a long lap, but still, you have to think that if the tyres are dropping off for Joel just a touch already, he's going to have a little bit of a problem when we enter, especially the last 5 minutes of the race. Elliot Dalton-Ayres, he's gone from attacking Carl Felvers to somewhat almost, you could argue, holding up the rest of the field a little bit. You mentioned that Carl probably wanted his teammate behind him. Actually, now he's got Elliot Dalton-Ayres maybe a touch slow on the ultimate pace, and Nicky Taylor, who's going defensive. That's not an aggressive move. It's a defensive move by the looks of it, and I'm not entirely sure why he made it that early, because Eric Axelson wasn't exactly close enough.
But I think that's the point. It's Eric Axelson behind him, and he's playing the team game here, I think, Nicky Taylor. If he is coming into this season not expecting to be a title contender, which that was certainly the impression I sort of got from him in that interview earlier on, if that's his mindset, then what's the point in being here? Well, to help his teammate win. He knows that Carl Felvers is going to be a championship contender, and Eric Axelson is likely to be his biggest rival. So if he can keep Axelson behind, that takes some points off Axelson, it takes some pressure off Felvers. So I think that is perhaps now going to become Nicky Taylor's primary objective, although he gets a much better exit out over the hill there than Elliot Dalton-Ayres, and closes right back in on him. Will he try and send it up the inside? Yes, he will. But again, I sense that was more to defend for Axelson, really, than to attack Dalton-Ayres. And it possibly will compromise his exit from the corner. Yes, it does. And Axelson is up alongside him. So a little bit of a slip up there from Nicky Taylor. And Elliot Dalton-Ayres pulls to the left as well. That gives a slipstream temporarily to Axelson. And the three of them are going to be under a blanket by the time they get to the braking zone at the end of the straight, because they're all closing on Dalton-Ayres, who doesn't know which lane to block. There's door-to-door contact between Axelson and Taylor. They go either side of Dalton-Ayres. This has got disaster written all over it. Taylor is sideways, he hangs onto it, but loses a couple of positions, and Axelson might just come out of that on top.
Josh Martin was yet again waiting there for it to hit the fan, I think, wasn't he? It was very much waiting and hoping that 3 wide wouldn't go and turn into one single file line. He has managed to carve his way through at least 2 of them. Axelson survived through that as well. So Elliot Dalton-Ayres down to 5th, Nicky Taylor in 6th. That means Axelson's now back onto a podium position, and Josh Martin is just behind him in 4th. So they now can try and track down the next 6.5 minutes Kyle Felvers, who is 3.5 seconds up the road from them for the time being. Josh Martin will have to worry about defending from Elliot Dalton-Ayres for the next lap or so. With a flash of the light, Elliot is trying his best to make sure that they're put off a little bit as they go through the final couple of corners. And indeed, they do actually go quite close to each other, don't they, Andy? We could be seeing another move here for 3rd place.
I think so. Josh Martin is doing the very Josh Martin thing of coming on strong in the second half of the race, isn't he? Closes in on Axelson, looks up the inside into the braking zone at turn 1, very steep uphill hill braking zone. That means you can brake a lot later than you think, and it's such a wide entry as well that you've got all of this room to make a move, and Josh Martin uses that to perfection, so he is into third place now. However, whether or not these two can catch Carl Felvers, I doubt, to be honest. Over 3 seconds the gap. Felvers, interestingly, only about 2 or 3 tenths quicker than the leader on the previous lap, but in the first part of this lap, he's got the gap down under 2 seconds. A mistake there from Josh Martin, and Axelsen comes right back at him into the left-hander. They chop and change lines because the circuit keeps chopping and changing from the right to the left, to the right to the left, to the left again out of the top of the hill, and Josh Martin hanging on by the skin of his teeth here, but Axelsen is all over him.
Yeah, don't you hate it? View, and they're going into the hairpin on the left-hand side. Now there's a long drive down to turn 12 straight after this. How are they going to come out of it? Well, it's Eric Axelsen ahead of Josh Martin. A little bit squirmy on the exit. Is that going to allow Josh a little bit of an impetus? They're both on the hybrid, but Josh will be in the slipstream as well, and there is a fantastic overtaking opportunity. They don't have to worry about Nicky Taylor or Elliot Dalton-Ayres as they go into it either, because they're scrapping amongst themselves for what is now 5th position. Going into it, Josh Martin on the outside. He's overtaking Eric Axelsen. Axelsen, is he late on the brakes? He is. He tries to square off the corner nicely, but he's not going to have the run for Josh just yet. He's going to have to wait just another lap.
Of interesting comments in the YouTube chat. One from Ethan Hill telling us that his internet cut out, so that explains his demise from the race earlier on, but not necessarily whether that affected Eric Axelsen directly. Also, a message from Josh Martin's friend saying that he and Eric need to work together. I don't think they're listening to you. I agree, but I don't think they're going to. With 4 minutes to go, so essentially 2 laps left of the race, these two have eyes only for each other right now, and for that third place, more to the point, because they're 4.3 seconds behind second place man Kyle Felvers, who is getting very, very close to the 1 second bracket now, 1 second away from Joel Lask, that is, and that is, I would imagine, roughly where you would start to pick up a bit of a slipstream. So yeah, look at that, 1.1 seconds quicker. At that rate, he'll be with Lask before the end of this lap. Meanwhile, third place is side by side again heading up the hill, and Eric Axelsen to the inside of Josh Martin will be, I'm sure, quite happy to let him go here, actually, knowing that he should be able to get him back again on the exit, which he does, because he gets that switchback manoeuvre, draws level with Axelsen, but that's now the outside line for turn 2, and Eric Axelsen will command the apex, and once again, temporarily perhaps, reclaim third place.
Yeah, but it's probably only going to be temporary, isn't it? And look at the far end of your shot there, we could see what is now the race lead battle right on your screens. Carl Felvers and Joel Lask. You know, we spent the entire race last time at Road America, Andy, being surprised at how fast Joel Lask was, and we spent the entire evening this week being surprised at how not very fast he is. Well, at the moment, he might not be the fastest out there, but he is in a damn good position for championship points.
Not dissimilar circuits, really, either. There's lots of sort of mid to low speed corners at Road America, sort of 90-degree corners. It's a very American thing, isn't it? And yet, for whatever reason, Lask just not gelling with this place. Of course, Carl Felvers did nothing but battle wheel to wheel with people in race 1, so he's had plenty of overtaking practice. Is he going to be able to find a way past Lask? Well, not down the back straight, interestingly. I did notice in the previous race that Lask seemed to be a little bit down on straight line speed, and I don't know why that would be, because the cars are all identical. There is a little bit you can do setup-wise, but nothing that I particularly would have thought would lose you too much in the way of straight line speed, unless, of course, Jack, that was tactical. Perhaps he doesn't want to lead until the final lap.
Well, Adrian Felvers in the YouTube chat is just as confused as we are. Apparently, he's put in all caps, why? And to be honest, Adrian, I have no idea. I don't even really know what you're asking about, but I'm very confused as well. At the moment, you're right. Maybe he just wants to be in the race lead when it comes to the final lap of the race, which obviously they're sort of semi-coming up to. Well, they will be coming up to it because we're going around the penultimate corner now, although there's a gap on the inside. And tell you what, you wouldn't be a racing driver if you didn't go for it, would you, apparently? So Joel Lask gives him the option. Carl Felvers favourably takes it.
If that were me in Felvers' car, I would be very, very strongly tempted to say that that was a deliberate move to give the lead away, because I would want to be in second place. And this is why, look at the power of that slipstream. Joel Lask straight back up the inside into turn number 1, and he's going to try and get the lead away, but we know Felvers doesn't mind hanging it tough around the outside. He'll get shown the edge of the road. Actually, Lask leaves Felvers more space than Axelsen was in the first race, and that might be something he lives to regret, because Felvers is going to sweep back through turn 2. Don't though, Joel. There's still plenty of time. You've got another run down that long back straight. He doesn't have any hybrid left. Carl Felvis has 2 hybrids left, but Joel Lask could still get back into the fight here for the race victory. We're on the final lap of the race now. They're 4 seconds clear of Axelsson, who appears to have got the better of Josh Martin. That battle for 3rd position, but they're not going to catch these two unless it all goes south in the battle for the race lead again.
Yeah, and we've got clarification of what Adrian was asking about. Why would Josh and Eric work together? Well, the only reason why we can think is not because they're teammates, but because they want to one of them win the race and catch up to these two. It hasn't happened, so let's focus on the 2 drivers that are potentially going to win this race, and you would argue that's going to be between Carl Felvis, who's on the hybrid now, and Joel Lask. And because Kyle has that hybrid, bit of a saving grace for him, isn't it, Andy? He's managed to pull up to the back of Joel, keep those 2 hybrids in mind, ready for this final lap of the race. Maybe that's why he wanted to be in 2nd place. He would be able to get the slipstream, use the hybrid, and secure that race victory. And it looks like, for the time being, that's what he's done.
I think you're right, and I think he's played that absolutely to perfection, because he should now have the pace through the last sector to keep that gap. Oh, contact. Nicky Taylor into Elliot Dalton-Ayres. What is it about HFT drivers and last lap skirmishes? That was contact that sent Dalton-Ayres down the order, and Nicky Taylor in 6th. Now, Nicky was suggesting, was he not, to his teammates after race 1 that he should have given the place back to avoid a bigger penalty. I don't see Nicky slowing down, but we'll see whether he maybe changes his mind through the last few corners. Anyway, Carl Felvis doesn't need to slow down this time, because from what we've seen, it's been a squeaky clean race here, and Kyle is going to come out of the final corner to become the first double winner of the season and really stamp his authority on the championship. Out of the last corner he comes, he flashes the lights, he wins the race, and he takes another good haul of points. And is in trouble. That's Josh Martin that he's tangled with at the last corner. Now, what does this mean? Oh, Andy Carroll's in the pit wall as well. It's all kicking off. Axelsson scrapes across the line in 3rd, Martin 4th, Taylor 5th, Verhoeven 6th. I don't know what was going on there, Jack, but that was a very dramatic final half a lap.
I'll tell you what's going on is Nicky Taylor having a massive grin on his face yet again, because he's taken advantage of something else that was nothing to do with him, was it? And he's managed to get a top 5 out of it. Yeah, I have no idea. I think Andy Carroll got excited, and to be honest, I can completely understand why. I've been in that position. You put your foot down a little bit too early because you see drivers having a little bit of a coming together ahead of you, and you dump it into a wall. And unfortunately, I've done that in real life. Luckily for him, it's going to be a little bit cheaper in the sim. A bit of a shame for Andy Carroll, that one. You can see John Jones just rounding out the field down here in 11th position. But what a great race. Another fantastic showing by the likes of Carl Felvis, Eric and Josh Martin, obviously, were two of the stars of the show yet again for race number 2. And Joel Lask, all of a sudden, turning it on. We didn't think he'd be there for even half the race, but all of a sudden, he led almost right to the end.
He did indeed. I'll tell you what, Jack, we started the evening, the two of us, sort of talking about how this was not our favourite of American racetracks. I think I've been converted. They were the 2 best races of the season so far, by far, with
as
lots
long
of
as I'm not driving it, it's fine.
Yes. Yeah, that's true, actually. I do prefer watching racing from around here than I do participating in it. But one man who I think does enjoy racing around here is our first 2-time race winner of the season, Kyle Felvis, who joins us now in the commentary box. Kyle, congratulations. Winning a race is always a sweet feeling. Doing it from the back of the grid even more so. And you seem to judge that one, tactically speaking, absolutely perfectly, catching Joel right at the end and managing to get the victory. How are you feeling?
Yeah, I mean, my voice isn't too liking it because I'm a little bit ill. There's a lot of talking through that to obviously Nicky and that lot, but yeah, it was good. I knew I had pace on Joel because I could see the lap times he was putting in, because he was putting in personal bests, and I could see my lap times, and they were about like 5 tenths quicker, sorry, each lap. So I knew I was gaining slowly. I just needed to keep it calm with the tyres, and it paid off in the end.
Yeah, I mean, that was a tactical race through the second half, I think, but through that first part of the race, it was an all-out brawl, wasn't it, trying to get through the field, really. You seemed to make better progress in the early stages, perhaps, than some of those that you'd been sparring with in race 1. Was it a little bit less sort of stressful around here, though, knowing you've got a bit more extra space to work with?
No. I think race 2, lap 1, we had Jens hit someone going into a corner, and then he spun, and I knew he was going to snap back, so I went to avoid it, and then sort of ended up out wide and had to try and rejoin, sort of messed Nicky up a little bit. But and then later on we had Eric on Ethan. I had to go wide on that, so it was not helpful really. I mean, at least we're not at Monaco or something, because otherwise I wouldn't have avoided any of them.
Yeah, it's your fate is always in other people's hands a little bit at the start of the race, but then having broken through, you were over 4 seconds adrift of Joel, I think, at one point. How confident were you that you could bridge that gap and crucially do it and then leave yourself some time to actually overtake him?
I mean, like I say, I was putting in like maybe 4 to 5 temps a lap quicker, so I knew eventually I was going to start getting there unless Joel unleashed a lot of pace, but I was sort of just trying to keep it chill, and I could see that I was sort of working down the gap, and then when it got to it, I just sort of made it happen.
Well, an excellent performance for you tonight. Really good points haul as well. Obviously, had that little bit of contact in the previous race, but your on-track results have been very, very strong, and that must now put you in a good mindset heading into the next round and the season beyond.
Yeah, it's been good. Endurance race next, not my favourite, but we moved past and we got to do them, so we'll see how that goes. I don't actually know what track it is, but it should be a good one.
Yes, indeed. So the track in question is Road Atlanta. So
I love that track.
Ah, there we go. That's perked you up a bit. That's good to hear.
Yeah.
So, right. But we'll let you go and rest. It sounds like you might need it, even if you weren't feeling ill. It's been a tough night of racing. But congratulations on that race win, Kyle.
Thanks, Andy.
So whilst Kyle goes and prepares himself for the... I need to look up in a dictionary the definition of endurance race, Jack, because I'm pretty sure 40 minutes doesn't quite cut it. But Kyle will be, I'm sure, putting in plenty of practice ahead of the race next week, as indeed will our runner-up from that race, Joel Lask, who you're about to talk with now.
Yes, indeed. I think, but it's a generational thing. These teenagers don't have the attention span, do they? No, it's very exciting. Hopefully, Joel is excited for it because you did quite well at the last endurance race, Joel. And to be honest, we spent the first race and qualifying talking about how you weren't quite at it today. That second race, you proved us wrong.
Yeah, I made the wrong tyre choice. I went into mediums, thought that was the play, but apparently the softs just last a lot longer than what I thought. So yeah, a bit of a mess up there, but a bit quicker in the second one. But COTA, it's just not my track. It was damage limitation for me.
Well, I'd say you did pretty well. I mean, there was a potential, shall we say, suspicion in the commentary booth that you might not last in the race lead for maybe the first half, until after the first half of the race. I'll be honest, I didn't suspect you would do that. But you managed to hold on almost until the last lap. What was the thoughts and feelings when Kyle was chasing you down?
To be honest, it's just points. Like I'm not fussy with him overtaking me. I knew it was going to happen. He was 3-4 tenths quicker each lap. I was counting it down, using the hybrid the best I can, but it was just a point hole. I knew it wasn't my best track, so move on to the endurance race next, which is more of my favourite.
I was going to say, on to next week then. You've now tested a couple of the new tyres. Has that changed your strategy from last week? Because obviously there might be a slight difference now. Do you think you're going to go into practice with a little bit more sort of leaning towards the medium tyres potentially? You're going to see how it is? You're going to see how the softs go again? Is there any sort of thought process in that at all?
Yeah, we'll see how the compounds change. But to be fair, I don't know. It depends what changes are made and how long the softs actually last. If not, we'll go on to mediums. But everyone will be in the same boat. So yeah, we'll see how it goes.
Well, I'm very much looking forward to it. But congratulations on a second place. In terms of damage limitation, I reckon that second race was pretty good going for you.
Awesome. Cheers.
Yeah, congratulations. Great to see Joel back on the podium there in race 2. Also, a welcome return to the podium for our third place finisher. Eric, I was worried that we were going to go a whole night without talking to each other. I can't remember the last time that happened. Hadn't been a perfect night to you up until race 2. Indeed, race 2 wasn't perfect either. We'll get to that in a moment. Let's start with race 1, though, because we were really enjoying that battle between you and Kyle until about halfway around the last lap. What happened from your point of view?
Well, I want to, before I say anything else, I want to send a huge apology to Ethan Hill, because that wasn't a great move. So, yeah, I just want to get that out of the way. But, yeah, about first race, it was a great battle throughout the whole race. And I think in the end it was just a small mistake by Kyle. He tapped me and I spun around. So it was just unluck, I guess.
It had been a fantastic race up until that point as well, and really demonstrated how good this track can be with this car, I think, because you were slipstreaming with each other. There was the tactics of the tyres and the hybrid as well, and so many changes of position between you. Were you enjoying it as much as we were watching it?
It was surprisingly a fun track, to be honest. I never raced before, so this is my first time on this track. So I'm still happy about how quick I was, but yeah, the race results wasn't obviously what I was hoping for, but it was a really good racetrack.
Yeah, and then obviously race 2, again, things didn't quite go to plan. But, you know, it's not been a terrible night for you. You've been in the top 5 in both races, obviously got a podium here. So if that's the worst night you have this season, then I guess you'll take that.
Yeah, there's a few more races, and I like, the rest of the tracks, I like them all, so that should be good, and I know them. But this one will be my drop round this far, for sure.
Yeah, thank goodness for dropped scores. That does help you out a bit when things don't quite go to plan. But at least we did get to have a chat. You got yourself onto the podium there in race number 2, Eric. Congratulations on that, and we'll regroup next week.
Thank you, Andy. See ya.
Eric Axelson then gets himself on the podium there in that 3rd race. Now, we haven't got him in here to talk to, but the vote has been done regarding the driver of the round, and I think it has been agreed by all of us, Jack, that Josh Martin will receive that, because really, he's been the driver who has excited us the most, I think, tonight. You always know that he's going to turn up at the end of the races and spice things up a bit, and he was true to that tonight.
Exactly that. He played race 1 pretty much to perfection. He said, he admitted in his interview that he didn't expect to get the race win in the way that he did, but he was in there with a good position and he had a good chance of it, even if there wasn't that contact. So I believe Josh is actually now just been dragged into with us. So Josh, congratulations, you've gotten driver of the day.
Hello, I didn't expect to be here. I was just about to log off. It was caught me off guard.
Well, it's a good thing you didn't. We can ask you a little bit about what happened on that final corner as well before we, again, congratulate you and focus on the positive things. Final corner of race number 2, Eric Axelson, what happened?
I was just messaging Eric, because this is going to sound really bad. I don't know.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, the previous lap, I turned in a bit early on that corner. I'd hit a bollard, and it sent me into like a big wheelie. I lost quite a bit of time to Eric then, and then I was a bit quicker on that last lap, so I caught up with him on the last lap, and then like the penultimate corner, I was still like a car length back, and I was like, you know what, except I'm 4th, I'm not going to be able to do anything now, and I don't know if it was like a lapse in concentration or I got distracted by something, or I don't know. And the next thing I knew, I'd obviously brake for the corner behind Eric, and then I was in the back of him, so I don't know if he like spun or I just hit him, I don't know. And then I was like, sat in the track then, I was like, did Eric just spin or did I hit him? Like do I wait behind him or do I go in front? And I thought, well, I'd bump him back straight and let him go, because I didn't have a clue what happened. It sounds terrible, but that's my honest answer.
No, I mean, to be honest, we didn't either. So I'm glad you could shed even less light than we already had on the situation. But you both ended up finishing 3rd and 4th, which is where you were going into the corner. So I'm sure there's no hard feelings. But yeah, driver of the day, mainly for that race 1 performance. Obviously, you got it via a little bit of contact, the race victory, but the saving of the hybrid, the saving of the tyres, and waiting for it to all unfold in front of you, it ended up working out in the end, didn't it?
Yeah, it's a shame I had that bit of a dodgy end on that last race, because I thought I drove quite well up until that point. I think I was picking my opportunities quite well, because the softs weren't really lasting the whole race, but they were still a bit quicker than the mediums. So I was trying to save a bit of tyre and then try and save as many hybrids as I could for the end. And I think it was working quite well. And even in that last race, I was sitting in 7th for quite a while, just saving those hybrids. And then when I had an opportunity, I made a run for it and got in front of a couple of guys.
Well, not only did you get in front of a couple of guys, you also made a big impression on us. So congratulations on getting the award, and I'm sure the sticker or the badge or whatever it is these days, I've actually sort of forgotten off the top of my head, will be on its way to you.
Cheers. Thank you very much.
Excellent stuff. Yeah, congrats, Josh Martin. Thank you for keeping us thoroughly entertained over the course of the evening. Yes, it is a medal. Yes, there's a medal.
That's it. That's the word I was looking for.
You said everything other than medal, I think. So. Got there at the end.
Let's go through Thesaurus.
Exactly. Thank goodness Rich Hayden was here to remind us. It's been a long night, and there's been a lot to talk about tonight. And the next thing we need to talk about is what that means for the championship standings, because I suspect that this has mixed things up slightly. Remember, these points will incorporate the dropped scores, I believe, and of course, a couple of drivers having slightly off nights. Certainly, Eric Axelsen, by his very high standards, had an off night, but he still moves back into the championship lead by just 2 points over Kyle Felvers, who is a further 8 ahead of Joel Lask. So those three now covered by 10 points, but separating themselves slightly from the rest of the field. Josh Martin, who we've just spoken to, is a further 11 points back then in 4th, so he is 21 off the championship lead and has 10 points in hand over Nicky Taylor, with Elliot Dalton-Ayres, Jens Verhoeven, Ethan Hill, Andy Carroll and Reece Bell rounding out the top 10 runners. But isn't it interesting, Jack? I think we're all guilty at the start of the season of sort of handing this championship to Axelsen. We really expected him to dominate. His early pace on that opening round sort of backed that theory up. It's not actually worked out quite that simple for him, has it?
Yeah, there's no sort of about it. We were head over heels for Eric Axelsen, weren't we? If you watch back that first broadcast. And to be fair, he did dominate it. And it did look like it might be a one-sided championship, but then we were slightly surprised and pleased that Carl Felvers got that race 2 victory, obviously, way back at Sebring. And since then, it has been very, very even, hasn't it? And it's also quite interesting to see how these guys have split their drop scores, because, of course, like Andy's just said, these are drop scores included. So Eric has dropped tonight's result, Carl has dropped last week's result, and Lask has dropped the first week result at Laguna Seca. So it's it's going to be quite interesting to see how that's going to pan out over the next couple of weeks. But we'll try and keep you as best up to date with it as we possibly can as well. So really looking forward to it.
Indeed so. It's been a fascinating start to the season, and as a couple of drivers have alluded to, we're back to the double distance race. I thought someone mentioned this as a suggestion before. I'm going to start a petition that's what we refer to them as, because 40 minutes is double the distance of the 20-minute sprint races. As you can see, we head to Road Atlanta next for that race before heading to Bridgehampton, the midpoint of the season, or the second half of the season really, starting with 2 races around there before Sebring hosts another 40-minute pit stop race. Virginia International Raceway on the 19th of October hosts the final sprint racing action of the season, and then it all gets completed at Watkins Glen, the full circuit at Watkins Glen, with another 40-minute pit stop race. So that's what's coming up in the rest of the AGON by AOC Mazda MX5 USA Tour. But, Jack, as always, there's plenty more to sink your teeth into here on the VRRC if you want to, for example, get behind the wheel yourself.
Exactly that, and we've got one of these fancy new graphics that we've been trying out over the past couple of weeks. Obviously, we've got the Mazda MX5 with Hybrid USA Tour, like we've just said, in the top left. You can get involved with that. By all means, we take drivers in at any time of the championship if you want to get involved. Top right, you've got fun races, pick a mix. Well, this week, it's going to be Brands Hatch at the Caterham at 7... the 420R. Yeah, Caterham 7 420R. Sorry, I got confused with the logo there. Caterham 7 420R at Brands Hatch for the Pick and Mix Fun Race. That is, of course, on Sunday evenings, and anybody can join in on that. So if you're watching this, you've got a wheel, you've got a set of Corsa, but you don't want to pay any kind of membership or pay to join a championship or anything like that, but you want to get involved with VRRC, then by all means, jump in. You can get involved with those races on a Sunday night. We've also got Time Attacks. This week, we are at Melbourne in an F3 car. Time Attack, always good fun. There are prizes up for grabs in those Time Attacks as well. It's round 2 currently going on at the moment. And I think that runs to from the 17th of September. So we're already a couple of days into it. And then if you just want to chillax, roam around with your mates, just having a bit of a chill time, listen to podcasts, audiobooks, music, whatever you want to do, then we have a free roam at Seto Corsa server here at VRRC down at the LA Canyons in the GT Classic Legends. I believe the cars get mixed up every single week, so you can experience whatever car that's on the screen there, whatever car you want to that's on the list, and you'll be able to just sort of chillax, go down a few mountain roads, and hopefully sort of like decompress from a hard day's work, shall we say.
yes, I don't know whether to congratulate you or complain bitterly that you just slipped the word chillax into a commentary, but we'll move on from that and instead take a look at that time attack that you mentioned in a bit more detail, which is, as you said, at Melbourne this week, and it is a single-seater theme to the time attack league this season around. So round number 2, the F3 car at Melbourne, then we head to Baku in the Formula 2 machinery, and then Silverstone, the classic version, or historic version really, that is, of Silverstone in the 1980s Ferrari Formula 1 car, in a more up-to-date Formula 1 car, the 2000s F1 car, and then the brand spanking new 2022 spec cars around the Montreal circuit in Canada for the final week of the Time Attack League. And as Jack said, the fun races are perhaps your entry level into racing here with the VRRC. There is a vote held periodically on our Discord, so another great reason to come and join the VRRC Discord, and from there you can vote for the car and the track. There's a huge selection of cars, literally ranging from high-performance single-seaters to transit vans, and the circuit's equally as varied as well. And it is Brands Hatch, the full Grand Prix circuit this week in the Caterham 7 420R. So that's what's coming up on the VRRC. Of course, we'll all be back here again in a week's time for our second double-distance pit stop race here in the AGON by AOC MX5 Cup, and we're very much looking forward to that again, and to see what the next twist in the story is here in what is turning into a fantastic championship. But my thanks as always to Jack Oliphant for joining me on the commentary, Rich Hayden, Lewis Edwards, everyone who helps put these broadcasts together. Looking forward to working with them all again in a week's time, and thank you everyone at home as well for engaging in the chat. It's been great to see all of your thoughts and opinions as the night has gone on, and we appreciate your support as always. We will see you again in a week's time then, but for now, from myself and everyone here at the VRRC, it's goodbye.
Woo!